All right, so it looks like we got a huge update on what's going on with the Veep stakes for the vice presidential election that's going on. This is going to be the most consequential decision probably for the next couple of decades, potentially, because it'll determine who's the next president, as well as kind of determining the influence of the party. So what we have here is an update on what's going on. So to kind of fill you in on what was happening prior, so this article says Governor Tim Walz now traveling to Washington, D.C. to interview with Vice President Kamala Harris Sunday. So he's one of three people who ended up going. So this article says Governor Tim Walz will no longer be traveling to New Hampshire to campaign for Harris, according to a spokesperson for the governor. Instead, he'll be in Washington, D.C. to interview with presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris. The change to Walz's schedule came late Saturday afternoon. So on Sunday, there were three people interviewing. It was himself, Mark Kelly, and Josh Shapiro. Those were the three people who were interviewing. One big reaction to this was to basically rule people out. For example, I didn't see Bashir on there, so I thought, is he not really in the running? Is he not in the running anymore? Because we know that on Saturday, they held a bunch of vetting meetings where they were doing a bunch of presentations on all of the candidates, right? But a reporter here says a source familiar cautions not to make too much of who has in-person interviews with VP today, as she is talking to others who have not been confirmed to the public. In 2020, Harris had a virtual meeting when Biden was choosing a running mate, while others met with him in person. Of course, that was during the COVID pandemic. And then we have reporting from Jarrett Renshaw that says news. Harris and Pete Buttigieg met today for about 90 minutes about the VP job, sources tell me. The meeting was not at Harris's home in Washington. So this is actually 2 days ago, and that looks like to be the max, which is surprising. If they choose Pete Buttigieg, I think they lose the election. But we have this really big update on what's going on with Walz and how the race is going. So there's this reporting from a reporter named John Heilemann. So he's a credible reporter. He's a reporter for NBC and MSNBC. So here is what he writes in his article. So he says, heading into this weekend and stipulating that when it comes to the Veep stakes, no one knows a goddamn thing about what's really happening is talking to the press, which is one of many reasons I make it a rule to avoid VP speculation as if it were a combination of bubonic plague and the clap. All signs were pointing toward Harris choosing Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as a running mate. The hack brain trust, for what it's worth, would heartily approve of that outcome for reasons thoroughly laid out here by Nate Silver and here by the Bulwark Jonathan V. Last. But the brain trust would also be perfectly at peace with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And that may wind up being a good thing too, because, and please, I beg you, keep in mind the caveats above. My reporting suggests that the decision Harris is expected to finalize tomorrow ahead of the Grand VP unveiling Tuesday in Philadelphia will come down to Shapiro and Walz. So it appears that the reporting is telling us that they've pretty much kind of axed everybody else on the list, according to this credible reporter, John Heilemann, and it's just down to this sort of NBA Finals matchup between two teams where you have the Lakers and the Celtics, or, it's a Super Bowl matchup. This is the final two. So one of the reactions that I have to this news is, hey, that's awesome that Walz has made the final cut of being in between these two people. That's one of my reactions. The other reaction is actually to be a little bit disappointed in that Bashir is actually not in the running anymore, because my kind of hedge against going fully all in on Walz, because I want to kind of protect myself a little bit too. I don't want to get crazy excited and then be let down by that. So what I thought, I don't want like a Bernie 2020 moment again. So I was thinking like, Bashir is actually a really good compromise candidate, because if you think of Walz maybe as like the furthest left, and you think of Shapiro as like the furthest right, a sort of midpoint would be Bashir. And I would not be mad if Bashir was chosen. He's really pro-union. He's got a lot of support even from like UAW and everything. And he comes from a red state, and so he would definitely have crossover appeal to some extent for sure. I think Shapiro has the least crossover appeal. I think he just kind of has appeal in Pennsylvania. So I was thinking like, okay, Bashir is still in the running. My hope is maybe if it gets deadlocked between Shapiro and Walz, they would go with Bashir. So that's the negative side of seeing that it's down to the two of them, is that what it means is Bashir can no longer be the compromised choice. He can't be the compromised choice. But what's good is that Walz has made the final cut. My hope is, I'm very hopeful that the vetting process that was reported, there was a vetting process that was reported that happened where, they gave all these presentations to review all the candidates and ask them any follow-up questions, etc. I hope that it was a genuine, rigorous plan. I think there's a conspiracy theory out there that Walz isn't really in the running. It's already been decided that it's just Shapiro, but Walz is kind of a way to placate sort of progressive people, which I hope that's not true. I really, really hope it's not true. And if the vetting process is legitimate, I think that because of all the unbelievable amount of scandals that exist, and there's so many of them with Shapiro, I think the risk to torpedo your campaign is so large, there's no possible way that you could actually choose him if your vetting process is thorough. However, if your vetting process is not thorough, I could see it being possible that you actually choose him. Now, The article further goes on and says that Walz has emerged as a finalist has nothing to do with the last-minute Stop Shapiro campaign. Also, that has not been a last-minute campaign. It's been going on the whole time since it's really been announced. That's been widely reported today, and equally little to do with the fact that Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders have been talking him up. Walz's status in the mix at the very end is a result of his breakout performance the past 2 weeks in taking the wood to Vance and Trump. Damn, taking the wood, going deep, huh? Which caught the eye of Harris, those closest to her, and a whole lot of other Democrats besides. So this is another reason why Walz is the pick. Walz is the meritocratic pick. Shapiro is the backroom candidate, hand-picked, Obama people-picked person. He's like a industry plant, right? The industry chooses that person and then pushes them on you. That's what's happening with Shapiro. With Walz, he came out of nowhere. Nobody expected him to be VP. Nobody thought he was in the race. Nothing. He came out of nowhere with literally nothing, no opportunity, nothing. He came out and created the big attack line, the main attack line right now that is so unfathomably effective. The Republicans are actually unable to even counter it. And they're now in this quandary where the more that they try to convince you they're not weird, the weirder they actually seem and sound. That's the guy you choose. You choose the guy who proves to you, the guy who you actually see him on his own trying out for basketball and he's so good you pick him, not the person you just don't even know and you just kind of pick him by hand. You pick that person, the person who worked hard to move up and show you that. That's what Walz did. Walz is the meritocratic candidate, and obviously that's going to give you the best outcome, right? So imagine with that little opportunity that he had, how much he gave you. Imagine what he would be able to do with all the more resources that exist. And so Walz is definitely the pick, and he has crazy crossover appeal. And so I'm really happy that it came down to Shapiro and Walz. There is some more reporting about this situation. So there's actually this video of Shapiro exiting his car. There's a reporter that asked him this question. Check out if you can hear it. So hopefully you were able to hear that. That's a reporter asked him, hey, Governor Shapiro, how's your meeting with Vice President Harris? So he stays in the car. He doesn't pull out the whip. He's just in the car. Now, a lot of people are saying this doesn't have a sign or anything. I personally think, honestly, if he did a really good job, he would be excited. He wouldn't be able to contain himself. He would be coming out of the car. You know when you just like smash an interview and you just feel hella good? You're like, oh, I beasted that shit. He doesn't have that, obviously, so I think this is actually a good sign, personally, because I think he wouldn't be able to contain himself, and he probably also thinks, like, oh, damn, like, I gotta kind of act like vice presidential now if he felt good about it. And another thing is, Walz is really, he's renowned for being, like, this guy who's very personable, very likable, fun to be around. The Biden advisor joked in the CNN article that we should have Walz around more often because he's so much fun to be around. Biden is so happy, everyone's so happy, he's infectious, like, everybody just loves the guy. So I think a meeting that he has with Kamala actually benefits him more. I'm not sure if Shapiro is charismatic like that. It definitely doesn't seem like that. He kind of sounds like an Obama knockoff, and he doesn't really seem charismatic as a person. So I don't know how he would fare in an interview like that, but I know Walz definitely would do well. So maybe this could be a sign that, hey, the opposite of knowing when you smash an interview is knowing, like, I've had this happen where it's like, I did an interview and it bombed so bad I just knew I was not going to get the position. Hopefully that's what this situation is, honestly, but that might apply more to another person who is actually reported. So Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, this is hilarious. So this says, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly says his mission is, quote, serving Arizonans. And then you can see this, Senator Mark Kelly has now deleted this post. So the reason this is bizarre is because he says his mission is, quote, serving Arizonans. This is kind of like the opposite of Bashir. I don't know if you guys remember, Bashir is like, hey, when I got elected, I got elected as a Democrat. But when I do actually get elected, I take that cap off. And what I end up doing is I serve all Americans. And then he says, and maybe, just maybe, all American citizens. This is like the reverse of that. So he ended up deleting this tweet here. He says, my background is a bit different than most politicians. I spent my life serving in the Navy at NASA, where the mission always comes first. Now my mission is serving Arizonans. So that's what he's saying. He's not saying now my mission is serving Americans, all of America. He's saying Arizonans. So it sounds like he's just going to be a senator. He deletes this, drops a whole new tweet. By the way, Mark Kelly looks like fucking Megamind, bro. I don't think a dude with a head like this veiny and just like big can win, honestly. I think there's certain like kind of physical attributes that can't win, but I don't know, man. I don't know if you want Megamind as your vice president. But it says, whether it's over my time in the Navy and at NASA, serving in the United States Senate, or visiting our troops overseas, I've learned that when your country asks you to serve, you always answer the call. So that's what he says. It seems like he's out of the race. Honestly, he might have flopped the interview so bad, and he just knew. He's like, I definitely did not get that, so he just pulled out. That's low-key possible, I feel like, because when you just bombed an interview and you're like, oh man, it's just horrible. I think that's definitely a possibility, to be honest. So what we'll have to see is, it looks like Mark Kelly is out of the race. So the news that we have here is, it is reported that it's down to Walz and Shapiro. The good side is Walz has made the cut. Hopefully it's a very serious, legitimate process, not made to placate progressives. The only downside for me is Bashir is no longer in the race. I was hedging with Shapiro or Bashir, where I was like, okay, if they don't pick Walz, maybe instead of going, because we oppose Shapiro so much, maybe they'll pick like the compromise candidate Bashir, and I wouldn't be mad. He's out. So now it's a finals, according to John Heilemann, who's a reputed reporter, and it looks like the announcement is going to be made Tuesday. So we'll have to see what happens. Hopefully it ends up being Walz. It would be absolutely game-changing. He'll be able to appeal to everybody, progressives, liberals, moderates, Republicans, everybody he'll be able to appeal to. He'd be a really great nationwide choice, and I think you have more opportunities to victory if you choose Walz over Shapiro. So definitely, hopefully that will happen, and I'll keep you guys updated on any other news that we get. But as of right now, this appears to be all the news that we have.